And honestly, I don't even understand how he has a show this big. Yeah, I get he's controlled opposition, right? This is what controlled opposition is 101. These are the people that are promoted. These are the people that are in the mainstream. These are the people that are never censored. But people need to really understand and realize that Ben Shapiro is literally no different than the furthest left progressive out there when it comes to the most important things.
Hello everyone, once again from the Tory dystopia of the United Kingdom. And today we are talking about Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire and the belief in some conservative circles that the Daily Wire of all things is actually controlled opposition. Which is so funny to me because, obviously, as a British person, the stuff that comes out of the Daily Wire crew and Ben Shapiro's mouth is just, like, absolutely extreme. Like, the other day, I saw a video of Michael Knowles talking about how Franco, the fascist dictator of Spain, was actually a good leader.
The difference here is Mussolini was a pretty bad guy. He wasn't the worst guy in the world. He wasn't Stalin. It wasn't Lenin, but Mussolini was, let's say, at least a mixed bag, leaning on the side of bad. He was a bad political leader. Franco was, broadly speaking, pretty good.
Like, literally a guy on the Daily Wire just outright praising a fascist dictator, right? I mean, not surprising he thinks it, but surprising enough that he feels comfortable to say it. Someone like Matt Walsh, who's constantly praised basically America killing like 90% of native people, is like saying that's a good thing.
Conquest and colonization and settling of this land was overall a good and noble and courageous thing. It is good that it happened, and we should be grateful for it. The people who came here and claimed this land were heroes. It was heroic. And they were heroes not because of the other good stuff, but because they came and claimed it.
This is stuff you hear out of the Daily Wire. But for a lot of conservatives, it doesn't go far enough for various different reasons. And today I thought we'd look at some of them. Like, we have some stuff, like Ben Shapiro promoting the COVID vaccines, obviously the dispute with Stephen Crowder, Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire supporting Ron De Santis. Loads of these people don't like that. And obviously there's certain things to do with Israel and America first hating like more neoconservative foreign policy. So I want to talk about all of those things today. Sadly, I haven't seen the Barbie movie, and I wish I had, because then I can make a whole video about Ben Shapiro's own review of that, because I made a good video about why Ben Shapiro's movie criticism is so bad, like in January. I would have loved to make a sequel to that, but sadly, I don't think it'd be good to watch a 40-minute review of Barbie and criticize Ben Shapiro's review without actually having watched it myself. But anyway, this video might be shorter. I'm not really sure. I always say that, and it ends up being like 30 minutes still. But yeah, I'm going to talk about all of that today. Please like the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments about just like the belief that Daily Wire is controlled opposition, which I just find, again, so funny. Also, follow me on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky, pretty much on everything at the Kavernacle. Also, consider becoming a patron. I'm trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible. Benefits include access to the private patrons Discord server, also access to my Nintendo Switch friend code, and access to exclusive content I've posted there in the past. Also, check out my subreddit and check out my second channel. All of those things are down in the description. So usually with a video like this, I would like go chronologically. Like, I'd go from, like, I don't know, Ben Shapiro in 2016 all the way to 2023. I think this time we'll work backwards, where I want to show you what prompted this video, and then we'll work back to show you like why a lot of conservative people like hate Ben Shapiro or hate the Daily Wire. So this tweet was going viral by Censored Men. Is Daily Wire controlled opposition? So we have a bunch of people there I don't recognise. We have Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Matt Walsh, some other guy I don't recognise, and Brett Cooper. No Michael Knowles in there, actually. And I just realised I didn't really explain what controlled opposition is. Basically the view that the government is kind of like manipulating the opposition so it doesn't stray into actual opposition to government policies. So, for example, if Ben Shapiro is promoting like the COVID vaccine, that's controlled opposition, right? Because if he was a real opposing the government and New World Order agenda, he'd tell people not to do this because X, Y, and Z insane reason, right? So that's what they believe. But also as well, the criticisms you're going to see, I don't think are absent on this platform. Like the anti-vax stuff Jordan Peterson has got you covered there 100%. Like, he is absolutely insane about COVID. And I think also it's just clear all these people are grifters, right? Like Ben Shapiro, as we're going to talk about a bit later, he absolutely hates Donald Trump, and they're jumping ship at the moment. But when Trump was president, they'd promote him 24/7. So, you know, but let's have a look at some of the comments. Most definitely, Stephen Crowder and Alex Jones have been telling us. Anti-Whitewatch, another lovely verified account, says, as gatekeeping gets. Sneeko saying the definition of it, and people arguing underneath. Tell me one conservative who's done more to fight the trans movement than Matt Walsh. And then someone replying, but what if the trans movement is just divisive propaganda used to get us fighting? I mean, this guy here is pretty close to getting it in terms of, yeah, like conservatives do hate trans people because it doesn't fit in with their like extremely patriarchal worldview. But at the same time, they are using the trans stuff like Ron De Santis and others because they literally have no substantive policies to offer and no ways to make your life better. Like, they're not even pretending they're going to make your life better. It's just, you know, I'm going to stop trans people existing. And that is a distraction. So yeah, they care about it in some ways. Not as much as they make you think, but that is quite funny. You have other stuff here. We're going to talk about this a bit later. Someone saying, yes, they are. One of my many recent posts, Ben Shapiro, COVID and vaccines. The sheer irony lies in how many conservatives rightfully criticize Fauci, even calling for his prosecution, yet remain eerily silent about celebrities who advocated for lockdowns and promoted COVID precautions more than anyone else. Among those, Ben Shapiro stands out as one of the most vocal. Ben Shapiro is a deep state matrix shill. It is evidenced by his vocal disagreements with Fauci, urging him to implement even more extreme measures. In essence, Shapiro appeared to expect Fauci to exaggerate the effectiveness of the vax, and he was displeased that Fauci, of all people, downplayed their impact. Shapiro even advocated for keeping schools closed. Can you trust Shapiro now or when the next big global event occurs? The answer is no. He's an agent for those in power. So what is so like unhinged to me about this anti-vax stuff is it's become so mainstream in Republican politics where like even Donald Trump was saying people think it's a bad thing to get it now because that's the stuff they've been pushing. And we're going to talk about this maybe in the conclusion, but Ben Shapiro is happy to get into bed with these people because he's gone back on it now, saying we were lied to about the vaccine, all of this stuff. And as you can see there, these people hate Ben Shapiro for promoting it in the first place. And Ben Shapiro is now scared to even say the stuff again, now that he feels like it's not politically advantageous to him. Funny, because Ben Shapiro, I guess, isn't like a stupid guy in the traditional sense. So he knows that like, yeah, like vaccines stop you from getting very, very ill. But increasingly, as I watched him over the years, it's pretty clear once he gets enough opposition, he'll just back down. So you guys remember, Ben Shapiro was pretty vocal against Donald Trump during the nomination. But once Donald Trump gets a nomination, once Trump becomes president, Ben Shapiro doesn't mind him anymore, right? But then he drops Donald Trump recently for De Santis. But I guarantee when De Santis loses the primary, they'll go back to supporting Donald Trump. And it's the same with the vaccine stuff as well, right? Ben Shapiro thinks he's smart. Obviously, he realizes how helpful the vaccines were in fighting the pandemic time. It's not that controversial to say, especially when Trump was president. But now everyone absolutely is unhinged about it. So they're turning on him just for the simple fact that he isn't an anti-vaxxer. And it's just really depressing as well, just side note, how mainstream this stuff has become, even with like RFK Jr. I spoke about this a bit last week, is that when I used to write about all this stuff back at my old job, like it was still fringe in Western politics. And now, at least in American politics, it is literally like the mainstream conservative position is to be against all vaccines. Like it's genuinely insane. So other people saying Ben Shapiro is a DeSantis supporter and never Trumper, while Ron De Santis was continuing pushing the vaccine after Trump left office and even injecting 100-year-old veterans. Again, anti-vax stuff. So obviously Zio Media, which pushes white people away from white identity politics and keeps people stuck in pointless BS, like crying about the Barbies movie for months. The Westernists writing just opposition. They are openly anti-white Judeo-accelerationists. Just a couple more tweets I found while looking into this. The Ben Shapiro show has evolved into 2 hours of massaging Ron DeSantis' balls and whining about Trump embarrassing. Tune in to the Ben Shapiro show today to find out why Biden and the corrupt DOJ indicting President Trump is a great thing and means we should definitely vote for Ron De Santis and his globalist donors. Ben Shapiro is hysterically attacking Barbie while urging us to support the Biden regime's financing of mass slaughter in Ukraine and to vote for the latest neocon stooge, Ron De Santis. So yeah, more like America first, more like anti-Semites and racists and all these different types hating on Ben Shapiro because he got the vaccine, he supports Ukraine, and he likes Ron De Santis, right? And we've been seeing this for a while, that while there was some degree of unity when Donald Trump was president, like there weren't many dissenting conservative voices, maybe like John McCain, Mitt Romney, people like that, like old school Republicans, but generally conservative media was all in on Donald Trump. Fox News, Daily Wire, all that stuff. But now what happens is you see with the Daily Wire, they want to get rid of Trump. And so does Fox News as well. So to a lot of America First types, they see that as, oh, it's controlled opposition from like the deep state of the government. They don't want Trump to win because he's such a threat. And I really don't view it like that at all. I think Fox News and the Daily Wire, they don't want Trump to win because he doesn't get stuff done, right? The only thing he did during his 4 years in office was the tax cuts, right? They want someone like Ron De Santis who passes everything because you just tell him what to do and he does it for you, right? Proving that in Florida, where Donald Trump is really too erratic. You can't be sure he's going to do anything, to be honest. So that's really why they want Ron De Santis. And I actually made a whole video about this recently where he was promoting De Santis even more. And like loads of people, like the Quartering, Geeks and Gamers, they were all just like turning on Ben Shapiro. But the vaccine thing I think is really interesting. So I want to focus on that a bit more. We've seen a fringe position go so mainstream that now conservatives are even afraid to promote like really traditional medical science of, yeah, get vaccines and don't get really sick, right? And that's good for the whole of society because you eradicate diseases which, because of anti-vaxxers, actually have made a comeback in recent decades, which can make people like very, very sick. And it's all just like this like individualism to the extreme. But Ben Shapiro promotes this stuff all the time. Like if you're going to keep attacking like Fauci and everything like that, don't be surprised. Your whole audience are filled with these anti-vax types, and then you have to bow down to them. So here is just a random ass Rumble video I found by someone called Dustin Nemos, and I think he pretty much summarizes like this more even far-right worldview when it comes to the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro.
Shapiro promoting the vaccine. Also, and a lot of people forget about this, and we had this article up on theredelephants.com before we took the site down and turned it into Daily Veracity. Ben Shapiro initially contributed to the shaming of the Covington Catholic kids. He retweeted attack after attack after attack on the Covington Catholic kids until there was backlash, until he figured out that he was wrong about that too. And then he unretweeted those tweets. An account with, I don't know how many millions of followers that Ben Shapiro has. The damage has been done. Stop watching these controlled opposition shills. They're never censored from anything, and there's a reason for that. Because what they're promoting as conservatism, their takes on all of the most important issues are no different. There might be some differences here and there, but they're negligible. They're trivial. Basically no different from the mainstream talking points. This guy's no different from any other liberal out there. All of a sudden, Ben Shapiro wants to come out and apologize. He wants to apologize to conservatives everywhere. He wants to apologize to the people who watch and listen to his show. He says that he has been tricked. He was deceived. We have this from The Blaze. After advocating for COVID-19 vaccination for over a year, Ben Shapiro says that he was deceived. We were lied to by everyone, he says. Oh, gee, you think? Mr. Shapiro, you think? You know, when people like me, back at the beginning of this, back before this was even rolled out, were saying these things, were telling the truth about these things that now you're admitting to be true, you called us conspiracy theorists, and then you continued to promote the vaccine on your show, and you said, get vaccinated, dopes. That's what you said in your Twitter timeline. You said, you basically called people stupid for not getting the vaccine, and now all of a sudden, 2 years later, you want to come out and apologize? Sorry, the damage has been done. And honestly, I don't even understand how he has a show this big. Yeah, I get he's controlled opposition, right? This is what controlled opposition is, 101. These are the people that are promoted. These are the people that are in the mainstream. These are the people that are never censored. But people need to really understand and realize that Ben Shapiro is literally no different than the furthest left progressive out there when it comes to the most important things.
Can you imagine, like, what an insane worldview you'd have to think racist Zionists like Ben Shapiro is really like no different to like the left or liberals. Like, even if you do think generally in American politics, like this guy was saying, like a lot of issues are the same. Like, I don't know, let's say Ben Shapiro and some random Democrat like Joe Biden, let's say, okay, Israel, they both support it, vaccinations, they both support it. It's very surface level though, isn't it? Like, the rhetoric is different, the economic ideology is far more to the right. There's no way Ben Shapiro is very similar to a lot of like your average liberal voters, I guess, even if we move away from the politicians. But basically, yeah, they're still really mad just about the vaccine, because to them, they see that as promoting the Biden regime, just like Ukraine, right? Because Biden's doing it, it's bad. Even though, you know, if Donald Trump was doing the same thing, I don't think they'd think the same. What is this guy talking about? Ben Shapiro, embarrassingly, has like completely backtracked on the vaccine stuff. We were lied to, Ben Shapiro finally admits. He was wrong to promote vaccines. Tuesday's episode of the Ben Shapiro Show. It's now perfectly clear we were lied to, and we were lied to at a very high level and from a very, very early on by both the vaccine companies in terms of the ability of the vaccine to prevent transmission, and by our politicians who apparently knew better. Shapiro stressed that false narratives, such as those carefully maintained and advanced by the Biden administration, stand to undermine faith in American institutions and experts. When a scientific institution alleges something in concert with the government that is issuing laws to get you to do a thing, and it turns out these things are lies, he concluded, we were lied to by everyone, we were lied to by the scientists, we were lied to by Pfizer, we were lied to by the government, we were lied to by the Biden administration. I don't like being lied to. Shapiro demanded that corrective action be taken, starting with having everybody who's involved in this sort of stuff needs to be fired, and then went on to say, there needs to be actual criminal prosecutions if you are disseminating false health information to people on the basis of zero evidence. Knowing what he knows now, Shapiro, who is double vaccinated, said he is not sure whether he would have taken the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine, but said, maybe not. Honestly, this right-wing grift is so shameless, because obviously Ben Shapiro knows this, right? I wrote about, like, the production of the COVID-19 vaccine. I interviewed people for my job involved in actually making it and stuff. And basically what anyone knows when it comes to clinical trials, research, is that you can do trials to a point where you get something released because it's safe and effective, and then you keep doing trials, and you keep doing trials for different variables, and the science changes. And especially with a pandemic, you see how different things mutate, how you need to change your own like medicines and vaccines to combat this, right? With this sort of logic, you would say that once an original scientist does like some, I don't know, experiment and comes to a conclusion, you can never like build on that work and come to a different conclusion because it means the original person is lying. The science was constantly evolving because it was like a brand new thing. So you keep researching it. And Ben Shapiro knows that, right? He talks about his wife being a doctor. Ben Shapiro understands science enough to know that just because in March 2020 they were saying one thing, them saying something different in like, I don't know, 2023 makes perfect sense and isn't part of like some secret conspiracy by the government to control you in a certain period of time. It's how much Ben Shapiro has to pander, is that he has to bow down and actively make the world a dangerous place. And his rhetoric is, it's Biden's fault for damaging trust in institutions, while himself spreading this narrative that you just can't trust the government, you can't trust health science on anything. But Ben Shapiro being controlled opposition is something like we've been seeing in the rhetoric recently, and it is indicative of a wider split in the American conservative movement, which I'm interested to see how it plays out as the Republican primaries get even worse. So you guys remember, I think in January this year, the Daily Wire offered Steven Crowder like a massive like $50 million deal for him to sign up for the Daily Wire. And Steven Crowder rejected it, saying it was big conservative, trying to censor him. And people like Alex Jones also played into this, saying, defending Steven Crowder, Alex Jones calls Ben Shapiro Judas Iscariot and claims the Daily Wire is controlled opposition and worse than the Democrats. So this is the mindset of a lot of these conservatives who hate Ben Shapiro. So Alex Jones says, let's get into, the media calls it a circular firing squad between Crowder and Shapiro, but that's not it. He said, I don't want the $50 million, which was over 5 years, with bandwidth and crew. That's not that much money, folks. It is a lot of money. That ain't worth that much. I can tell you what it takes to run this. He's running a similar operation. Then they spun it if that he was mad and wanted more money. Then a guest, Robert Barnes, saying, absolutely, the contract wasn't a $50 million contract. The contract was indentured servitude. Contract to be loyal to big tech or lose your money over the next 6 years. The Daily Wire was founded by a billionaire family out of Texas connected to natural gas and fracking. That's involved in a real weird religious movement that backed Ted Cruz, that founded the Daily Wire to take out Breitbart and Bannon to try and take out the populist wing of the Republican Party. Jeremy Boring has admitted that being an anti-Trump platform was their foundation. They were backed by spook-related money and spook-related sources. Their goal, it's not a coincidence they were big backers of Ted Cruz. Not a coincidence they were big Trump haters. Jones saying there's no doubt that if you're going to control the opposition, you should lead it. It's 100% that Ben Shapiro is a figurehead. There's some good people at the Daily Wire. I don't want to attack them all. I'm just telling you folks, they are worse than the Democrats. They are the Judas goats. They are Judas Iscariot. Ben Shapiro is Judas. And then obviously you have the Alex Jones far right and people like the Gab CEO. Again, that platform is just known for being a far right haven. So the CEO of Free Speech Social Network, Gab, has claimed that the reason conservative commentator Ben Shapiro frequently has some of the biggest engagement on Facebook is due to controlled opposition. So Andrew Torber told Newsweek, Ben Shapiro serves the interests of the establishment elite. There's a reason his content is consistently in the top 10 links on Facebook on a daily basis, often taking up 6 or 7 spots in the top 10. It's not because his ideas are good or new or because he's speaking truth to power. Facebook can point to Ben Shapiro's inflated performance on their platform and say, see, we don't censor conservatives. Ben Shapiro is only a threat to the 19-year-old college women that he debates. Facebook knows this, which is why they boost him among other establishment-friendly conservatives who pose no threat to the established order and indeed serve the interest of the uniparty American oligarch regime. So the only truth I'll say to all these far-right people and just conservatives who don't like Ben Shapiro, the only thing I'll say about their criticism is Ben Shapiro largely does represent establishment conservatives, right? I still think he is firmly on the far right. I know people get mad when I say that about American conservatives, but American conservatism is a far right ideology. You just have different flavors. So you have establishment far right, or you have more conspiratorial nationalist far right. And there are a few differences between them. Maybe like, you know, the anti-neoconservatism of the alt-right, or the anti-Israel stuff and the anti-Zionism stuff, which is often from the anti-neoconservatism angle, but also because they are massive anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists, where Ben Shapiro will happily pander to these conspiracy theorists without outright saying it, but at the same time, sometimes their mask does slip, and they come out and say, you know, they support De Santis, but don't worry, like I said, if Trump wins the nomination, they'll be all promoting Donald Trump within like a year, because they always do that, because it's about making money all the time. But like I said, it's interesting that this split is happening, and really it would be so interesting to see if Donald Trump lost the primary, what would happen, because a lot of people who like Donald Trump also like Ben Shapiro. But I think there is a breaking point where if DeSantis got the nomination, which isn't going to happen, they would all back him. And then what would Trump do? Run third party maybe? They'd all say that, you know, Alex Jones is already saying Ben Shapiro is Judas, right? They will all be saying Ben Shapiro, Ron De Santis, they betrayed Donald Trump to the deep state. Because these people have still convinced themselves, these America Firsters, that Donald Trump represents a threat to the establishment, which is just hilarious how they view politics. Like, billionaire, ex-president, anti-establishment. He might not fit in with the conventional political establishment of the Republican Party, but he does fit in generally with the religious and financial elite of America, right? He is not a threat to these people in the slightest because he's one of them. But these guys have all convinced themselves that sometimes he's a threat. But what did he do when he was president? He just gave massive tax breaks to the richest people in America. Aren't they the establishment? Aren't they the swamp? So that's why it's so funny they're turning on Ben Shapiro. Like, I understand it to some degree, just because Ben Shapiro is, I don't know, against Donald Trump, who's their boy and stuff. But at the same time, there isn't really too many policy differences between Ben Shapiro and America Firsters beyond anti-neocon and anti-Israel, right? Which can be a big thing for them. And just generally, they don't like Jewish people either. But I feel like Ben Shapiro, and this is like the conclusion to everything, and everything we've been talking about, Ben Shapiro is a Jewish person in a primarily Christian conservative movement, and Western chauvinists among them will happily accept Jewish people, happily accept people from Israel maybe as well, and they'll happily accept Israel as part of Western Judeo tradition, as they say, or values or whatever. But the thing is, he's cultivated such an audience of massive racists as well. There's going to come a time when they're going to turn on him properly, right? And if I was Ben Shapiro, I'd be super concerned with my safety generally, because if America went really downhill, became more authoritarian like Russia or something like that, right? Does Ben Shapiro think they'll spare him? They won't go after him? Because they will, right? They're already saying controlled opposition for minor things already, right? But if someone more overtly nationalistic, racist gets in with a bunch of people who are like him backing him, they'll go after Ben Shapiro. And him downplaying all this anti-Semitism basically allows it to flourish within his audience because, like I said, he tricks them into thinking the only real anti-Semitism is liberals and leftists who criticize Israel. It's not Jordan Peterson. It's not even Kanye West, really. It's those liberals and leftists who don't like Israel. And he's allowing all these conspiracies to thrive because he doesn't call them out. And even when he does call them out, it's so half-hearted because he doesn't want to actually enrage his fan base. And with the split between De Santis and Trump, it is just going to be interesting in future what happens. But I would say to Ben Shapiro, he's just playing with fire, and he has been this whole time, right? And because he's Jewish, a lot of conservatives will never, ever accept him, right? I feel like a lot of people tolerate Ben Shapiro like they do with Candace Owens and others, because they say what they want them to say right now. But there's always going to be a breaking point, and there's going to be a time where Ben Shapiro can't backtrack enough, and they'll forget it, right? Maybe you can backtrack on vaccines. Maybe you can backtrack on Donald Trump in 2016 and 2017. Maybe you can backtrack on that stuff. There's going to be something you do that they're not going to forget. And honestly, that's when he's in like a lot more trouble with his audience. And sometimes it's hard to get much sympathy when he gets so much hatred online, because he cultivates such a hateful, I guess, community on the Daily Wire. Literally has people who work for him who actually promote fascist dictators. So when these people turn on him, I'm just like, you get what you deserve, really. Like, you realise you're allowing your own people like Michael Knowles, who works for you, to go on air and say that Franco was a good guy. What did Franco do in World War II? Who was Franco allies with in the Spanish Civil War? The Germans. He literally wrote up a list of Spanish Jews and handed it over to the Germans, right? One of your employees, a Catholic fascist, is saying that guy was good. And you don't care. No sanctions for him. So what's going to happen is that stuff is just going to spread among your community even more. And more of your own audience are going to hate Jewish people. But Ben Shapiro seems to not really care about anti-Semitism when it comes from the right wing. You could even praise a fascist dictator who did what I said. But if you criticize Israel, you must hate all Jewish people or something. But anyway, that is it for the video. Just a quicker one today, I think. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.